Yeah, I think we will start there because I think the numbers are still going up, but I think a lot of people have now joined us. So good afternoon, and welcome along to our session today, which is about introducing our investment research opportunities here at Baillie Gifford. My name's Claire Stevens, and I'm the Early Careers Manager here at Baillie Gifford. And me, along with our colleagues this afternoon, will be talking you through a bit about the programme, what it's like to work here, and obviously answering some of your questions as we go through. But before we actually get started, I just want to cover a little bit of housekeeping. So as you know, this session is being recorded. So that will mean that in a couple of weeks, you'll be able to watch it back on our website. There's also a great opportunity for you this afternoon to ask us some questions. So at any point from now on, from the rest of the session, feel free to put them in the Q&A session, or the Q&A part of the application, and we will do our best to answer them as we go through. So that is basically the key points as we go through the session. So before we get started, I thought it might be really good to have our panel introduce themselves, just tell you a little bit about them, as I say, because you will be hearing from them as we go through. So I'll pass over to Lucy. Would you like to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, sure. Welcome everybody. My name's Lucy Brown. I'm an investor on our global income growth strategy, and I joined Baillie Gifford in 2020, so the middle of the pandemic. Before that, I was working in London as a lawyer and studied law at Edinburgh University.
Thanks, Lucy. David, would you like to go next?
Hi everyone, I'm David. I've been at Baillie Gifford for 1 year now, and for my undergrad I studied philosophy at St Andrews, and I'm currently in the International Alpha team.
Thanks, David. And then Kirsty?
I'm Kirsty. I've just started my 12th year at Baillie Gifford, and I am an investor on our US equities team.
Thanks, Kirsty. So before we get into a bit of a kind of panel with our panelists, we thought it might be quite useful to give you a little bit of background on Baillie Gifford, so who we are, where we're based, and just a little bit of information on us. So I'm going to pass over to Kirsty to do that, and then we'll pick up after that. Thanks, Kirsty.
Thank you. So I think the starting point is, who is Baillie Gifford? So Baillie Gifford is a long-term growth asset management house based in Edinburgh, Scotland, and we've been in existence for 115 years. So in simple terms, we invest in companies on behalf of our clients, which we expect to grow, develop, and transform over a 5+ year time horizon. Our clients are pension plans, endowments, and individuals based all over the world. And we manage around £230 billion on behalf of those clients. So our approach to investment management, we have a long-term approach. We place limited emphasis on following traditional markets and much more on research and building long-term partnerships with both the companies that we invest in, but also academia and experts in their fields. We actively manage our investments. We are actively engaged shareholders, and we put our clients' interests ahead of our own. And the greatest enabler of our long-term focus is the partnership structure. So Baillie Gifford is a private partnership with 57 partners, all of which work within the firm. And this means that we don't have to report quarterly earnings or worry about external shareholders. And so being independent, being private, and being wholly owned by working partners allows us to focus on our clients and their investments. And it helps our stability, motivation, and culture, and enables us to take a long-term view in everything that we do, including investing, client relationships, and also the development of our staff. In terms of our teams, in the words of Hillary Clinton, it takes a village. So we have many different departments coming together to make things happen. We have the investment department. This department is divided into teams that focus on equity investment, and then those that focus on multi-asset or income investment opportunities. And these equity teams are usually organized by geography or size of the company that they invest in. We have an information systems department, which many people are quite surprised to hear is the largest department in the firm. And they source and install and maintain the technology that we use to build our in-house systems, which ultimately helps us to deliver the best service possible for our clients. And then we have our business operations teams, so the oil in the machine, so to speak. And this covers many departments in the firm that come together to make our business possible. That's everything from finance, legal, HR, to client administration and trading as well.
Thank you, Kirsty. So hopefully that gives you a good bit of background onto obviously who Baillie Gifford are and the different departments that we have here. Before we go into finding out a little bit more about the equities programme, I just wanted to cover off a few bits of information. So our programme is currently open just now, so you can apply, and all applications would go through our website. So the Early Careers at Baillie Gifford website, and the applications are opened until the 13th of November. But I would encourage you to put your application in earlier rather than later, especially if you've got your application kind of ready to go. So any questions that you do have on that, please do ask as we go through the session this afternoon. Or if you want to find out more about the day-to-day job or anything else that you're kind of curious about finding out before you put your application in. So as I say, remember to put your questions in into the Q&A part on the web function on this webinar, so that we can make sure we answer them for you. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pass back to Kirsty just to find out a little bit more about the equities programme, and then we will go to questions after that. Thanks, Kirsty.
Thank you. So we accept applications from all degree disciplines. A 2-1 is the minimum entry requirement. So on my team at the moment, we have backgrounds in computer science, biochemistry, economics, finance, philosophy, and history. The investment equity program is a 5-year program. Our multi-asset program has actually been paused this year, so we're just focusing on equities here. During the program, you'll have the chance to rotate annually through a series of autonomous investment teams. And if anyone has any specific questions on that, I'm sure Lucy and David are happy to answer them, given that that's the process that they're going through at the moment. And you'll find that every team has its own approach and distinctive characters as well on those teams, alongside its own approach to an investment philosophy as well. But all have the same purpose, and that's to drive positive long-term returns for our clients. So for the first 3 months of the program, you'll follow a structured training program where you will learn more about business, culture, and your new role. The training program is a blend of very structured training in topics like finance to learning by osmosis, by spending time with your team and getting dragged along to various meetings. You'll also complete a broader learning program covering topics like communicating with colleagues as well. In your first 2 years, you'll work towards both the Investment Management Certificate, or the IMC, and the Chartered Financial Analyst, or CFA Level 1. And these are both professional qualifications, and training support and fees for these are covered by the firm. In terms of ongoing support, each new analyst is assigned a year group mentor who provides support across the 5-year training program. In each of your rotations, you'll also have a line manager to support you in your team. And in addition, you're also assigned a buddy. And this is normally someone who's recently been through the program and can offer advice and support as you transition into this new role. So the program may last for 5 years, but development and growth happens on the program and beyond. Previous trainees have gone on to focus in specific sectors, regions, moved into fund management, or even into our client department as well. And many of our current partners started on our training program.
Perfect, thank you very much. So I'm going to open up with the first question that we've kind of thought about here is, what does a typical day look like? Okay, because that's a question we get a lot from people. So Lucy, what would your typical day be?
Yeah, sure. So what I would say is the weeks definitely look quite different. Often you might be doing an investment trip, so there's a bit of travel, or going to conferences or meeting with companies. But I'd say a typical day, there is a lot of desk research. So I'll be typically doing research on a company that either we're looking to invest in, that we're interested in, or perhaps something that we already hold, and we're sort of updating the investment cases, testing whether there's still a good reason to hold it over the long term. So yeah, that involves a lot of reading, as you might imagine. So reading about the industry, reading company reports, also speaking to a lot of people. So that might be speaking to colleagues across the firm. There's a huge wealth of knowledge, as you can imagine, that's been built up on different companies. So it's trying to speak to colleagues that know the company, but might also be identifying experts in an industry or ex-employees that can give you a real insight into what the company culture is like and that sort of thing. So yeah, and also taking the time to read the research of colleagues and discuss that research in our meetings is a big part of a typical week, I guess.
Thanks, Lucy. Is there anything that you would add to that, David?
Yeah, I think that Lucy's covered that incredibly well. The majority of my week is spent on company research, and as you said, that can come in a variety of forms. Speaking with other analysts internally, externally, reading annual reports. And then spending a lot of time on preparing for stock discussions, ensuring that we have a good base of knowledge so that we can all come together within the team and really try and come closer to a decision on what we want to do with the company. And then there's also training and kind of supplementary events which are held throughout the week. So that could be a variety of things, which could include my grad intake, chatting with Kirsty about how she invests and trying to get an idea of how everyone is different within the firm and understanding each other. So I think that's pretty valuable.
Okay, thanks. And then Kirsty, anything you would add?
I think ultimately my role is still very much a research role as well. Like everyone at BG on the investment floor is a researcher. I would add that because I'm an investment manager, I have additional responsibilities, I guess, on top of that, including I might have to do some more admin tasks like dealing or writing up notes on the reasons that we bought or sold something. And then obviously on occasion as well, meeting clients or prospective clients who may or may not be interested in investing in the fund as well.
Great, thank you everybody. So the next one I have is a little bit more focusing on the application. Now David, since you were the most recent applicant that we have, I thought this might be a good question for you. So what was it that actually made you choose Baillie Gifford, and how did you find the application process?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the main things that attracted me to Baillie Gifford was the training program. I think it is something that's very rare, and the fact that it's 5 years long, as Kirsty said, I think indicates how long-term the company really is, and that they genuinely care about you as a person. It's not just about short-term outputs and not really caring how you get there. It's developing investors and how they think, and allowing you to actually grow as a person as well. It really does feel like there's a focus on you as an individual instead of as just a kind of cog in a machine, and which I think is the case in a lot of other firms. So that, alongside Edinburgh, is just an amazing city. There's a lot of green space. The buildings are great. I grew up here, and yeah, I knew I really wanted to come back, and I think it is amazing that Baillie Gifford is centered here and gives you a lot of space being away from London so that you can really think and get away from the noise. For the application process, then I really enjoyed it. I think even if I hadn't got the job, I would have been glad that I'd done it, because it really tests what is making you tick and questions your reasoning behind the decisions that you've made in the past, which was really valuable. I think it's also a really good representation of what will actually be involved in the role. So just being able to defend your position, but also being open to others' inputs and adjusting your position with those in mind, and just thinking about your reasoning.
Thanks, David. So I suppose the next thing I was wanting to focus on is we've obviously said that we accept applications from all degree disciplines. So that can be undergraduate or postgraduate degrees. I can see there's a couple of questions in there on that. So I just wanted to touch on that just now. And I think one of the most common questions we get is around transferable skills, and I suppose how we train people up in that way. I suppose a question for you, Kirsty, is what type of skills did you use previously that you feel you then brought in and have used in this job? Obviously, we've spoken about how we train people up, but there is a lot of transferable skills. So what would you say they were for you?
I think that the ability to apply yourself to research is a transferable skill that just about any university background is going to bring to this role. So obviously people who have done longer periods of postgraduate study have probably done longer periods of research. And actually probably one of the challenges of that is being able to pull yourself out of something and work on something a little bit faster than maybe you have been used to. So I think being able to spend time researching, I think the curiosity that comes with having spent, so I did an undergraduate and then a master's, that curiosity of having gone from quite a general topic to then focusing more specifically over time and being able to dive in deeper is again a sort of transferable skill. For me as well, I did a lot of ballet before I joined Baillie Gifford, and I think there are a lot of transferable skills from that side of what I did as well, in terms of the sort of that willingness to invest in developing and training and learning over a long period of time, and also recognizing that there isn't a sort of there's a perfection that you're aiming for, but on any one day, you're probably not going to hit it, and so that ability to recognize that you need to work on something and it's a continuous process, and that you're never really going to quite reach that, I know exactly what I'm doing, there's a completely right way or a wrong way of doing this. It's just developing your techniques over time and building those techniques. So I think that's been a really transferable skill set as well. And then for me personally, I think this is a really psychologically quite challenging job, because you spend a lot of time when you're a long-term investor thinking that you either look like an idiot or thinking, am I right, am I wrong? And so I think a really useful skill set is that ability to self-reflect and to understand where your own biases are and where you are challenged and where you find things that are easier, and how you bring those to the team that you operate in, and how they can help you through more turbulent periods of this job when you are feeling a little bit like, oh, am I right, am I wrong, where are things going to end up in the long run? Because that's quite a difficult thing particularly when you come from a background of being studying in academia, where you do an end of year exam and somebody gives you a mark. So I think that really helps as well.
Thanks, Kirsty. I'm just conscious, is there anything, David or Lucy, you'd like to add to that? Because you've obviously got different backgrounds as well, so anything you think might help some of our participants?
Yeah, so I studied philosophy for undergrad. I actually think that it's an incredibly helpful thing that I've done in the job right now. A lot of what we do is essentially building arguments which don't really have a set outcome. Everything tends to be quite ambiguous. You're not going to get that definite outcome. So philosophy was quite helpful for that, in just being comfortable with ambiguity. I did a master's in management as well, and I actually think that my philosophy degree is far more helpful than my management one. So I just hope that a lot of people that don't have financial backgrounds or haven't studied finance or economic kind of backgrounds will apply. I think that is super valuable, and people all have their own skills that they bring to the table, and that is part of what makes Baillie Gifford quite special.
Thanks.
The thing I'd maybe add, just coming from a legal background, is just that I'd echo what Kirsty said about just applying yourself to research, and so that desire to dig into things and research them, but also to be able to see things from the sort of weigh cases up, build a case, and consider the alternatives, which is definitely something I thought transferred pretty well from law. And then having worked in a job previously, it's kind of thinking about not just the research for the sake of research, but also you're trying to get to a decision. So you know, in my previous job, it wouldn't be a case of spending all day finding the perfect legal answer. It's like, okay, a client needs a solution and an answer to something that they can apply. And in the same way we're doing research to make a decision, we still need to sort of remember that and you know, be willing to make recommendations, even if it's on the basis of imperfect information, because you're never going to be able to know everything, but especially when you're looking at 5-10 years. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. So Kirsty obviously touched on like the training and support that you get when you join. But a question I've got for you, Lucy, is can you tell us a little bit more about the training? Obviously, you had came from a different background, so how did you find the training and getting you up to speed on and doing the job?
Yeah, I mean it's extensive and brilliant training program actually. I'd be the first to admit that when I joined, I was allergic to maths, allergic to spreadsheets. I actually don't think I'd ever used a spreadsheet until I started working here. And so part of the training is getting you up to scratch with how do you read financial statements, and that's part of the job, right? I don't want to overstate how mathematical and numerical it is, but it's definitely for me was one part that I really appreciated getting that training. And certainly when it comes to doing the CFA and IMC, we get a program, a course of tuition and study leave as well. So that all felt pretty supported. Get tons of resources, which is great. And then I think that's sort of the fundamental stuff in the first couple of years, and then there's also a lot of opportunities to keep doing training as you go. So even this year, I've done a 2-day-long forensic accounting course, a workshop on ESG analysis. There's a course that Baillie Gifford runs with the University of Edinburgh on assessing climate risk. So all these kind of things, it's like there's plenty of training opportunities as you go. But in those initial few months, yeah, there's an extensive program to teach you the fundamentals of what we're trying to do here.
Great, thank you. I'm going to pause there for a second actually and go to some of the questions we've got here, because there is a lot of questions coming in about I don't have a finance background, or I don't have a math degree, or I don't do economics. And I think it's important that we touch on that just now, because hopefully, having heard from the panelists and having heard some of the conversations that we've just covered, that is not a key requirement for people to come in and to be an investor with us. But I thought it's important to actually pause there and maybe just talk about this for a second. So Kirsty obviously spoke about her background. She spoke about some kind of people in the area, and other people sit around lots of other people. So we take people from a whole wealth of backgrounds. So I think that what I would do is think about what some of our panelists have already said today about those transferable skills, and the learning and education that you get, and think about what it is that we're actually looking for. We are not looking for people to come in and be investors of any shape or form. Like you're trained up to do that. So a couple of the questions we've got in here is about what work experience did you have before you joined? How can you show that you can be an investor, and where have you got that work experience from? So let's just pause for a second and let me ask all of you the question, like, what experience did you have of being an investor or of working in the finance sector before you joined us? Did anyone have any?
I had a year where I was an intern at a venture capital fund. I think that was quite helpful in the sense that because it was venture capital, it's very focused on a much longer time horizon than asset managers typically are. And I think that carries over quite well to Baillie Gifford and the kind of long-term focus. But that was it. And I actually think that some of my other experiences were equally as helpful. So I was a kind of youth curator for the Edinburgh International Film Festival, and being able to kind of analyze film entries and try and put together a program with a bunch of other talented people that are really passionate about film. I think that was something that has helped me a lot here. So I don't think that it has to be some kind of financial work experience that will get you in here. Yeah, I don't think Kirsty or Lucy mentioned having any financial work experience before this.
Yeah, so I think that you just don't. So what would the advice be to people who are feeling like this? What advice would you offer them?
I'll maybe go first, and then David and Kirsty, feel free to jump in. I suppose it's like you're considering applying to us. So what sparked that interest? Where does that come from? For me, and I think for a lot of people, the path to Baillie Gifford is that you almost like stumble across it somewhere along the way. And for me, I was interested in pursuing a research role, but also from working I was doing corp a lot at the time. I knew that I liked researching companies. It was just that I was on the side of the table once an investment decision had been made, right? So I was vaguely aware that there was an investment manager making a decision to invest in a company, and that sounded interesting to me. So I think as part of that, I'd started listening to a few podcasts about investing. I think by the time I applied, I'd maybe read 1 or 2 books about investing, but this was like really early stuff. That was just, there was something there that I was interested in, which had led me to Baillie Gifford. So I guess my advice to people is just think about the reason that you're even considering us. There's something there that's telling you there's an interest, and maybe just dig into that, and what is it that you're really intrigued about or interested about. But yeah, definitely wasn't the case that I had heaps of investment or financial experience. As I say, I wasn't from that background at all, but there's just something about investing in companies and learning about different businesses and what makes them grow that I found interesting.
So I have an economics background, and then I have a master's in carbon management, but I found Baillie Gifford because they sponsored a ballet dancer. So I also should say, at the time, Baillie Gifford's website was absolutely terrible, and it's very good now, and there's lots of information, but I'm not sure even when I got the job I was entirely sure what asset management actually was. So I don't think it's a disadvantage. Now, there's a lot more information out there now, and I would not say if you get an interview that you can go in and not know, not have done your research on the business. I'm not recommending that, but I will say that it is no disadvantage when we're doing screening or we're looking for candidates if you do not have a background. It's not that you are expected to be a much higher quality candidate because you haven't got that background. Everybody is treated the same regardless of what their degree background is in that sort of screening process. So I guess what you're trying to understand, to sort of Lucy's point, is we want to understand why you want this job. You know, what do you think are the transferable skills that you have from the degree that you do have that you think are transferable? And that's what ultimately we're looking for in those kind of teams. People want that variety, because that's where you get the different insights. That's where you get people thinking about different companies in different ways, and ultimately thinking differently is how we're going to potentially deliver longer term returns for our clients. Because if we think the same as everybody else, then we're not going to outperform. So we need those people with those different backgrounds, those different perspectives, because that's how we best service our clients in the long run.
Thank you. That's helped us answer a few questions that people had. So I'm just going to jump back into the stuff we were talking about on the job. So just thinking about like kind of ongoing support. So what support do you have? So we've obviously spoken about the training, and we've spoken about what you do actually on the job, but what about the stuff around that? So if you're struggling with something, or you have like a little bit of a crisis of confidence maybe in something that you're doing, What support would you say you've got around that? So again, I'm probably going to pose this to David and Lucy. So yeah, what would you say?
I think I'd start by just saying that I can't convey enough how genuine and kind the people are here. I was really surprised by that. I kind of had this idea in my head of finance firms being a lot of kind of office politics and people. Yeah. But yeah, everyone that I've spoken to is really kind of genuinely wants to help you. People, no matter what kind of level they're at, will set aside time to chat with you about anything that you're unsure about. And I'm quite a naturally nervous person, and I feel very happy to speak with the other investors. The mentor kind of program is really helpful for that as well. My manager is my mentor as well. And he's just put aside so much time to help me learn so much, and I don't feel embarrassed to ask silly questions or anything like that. I think a really warm and kind of open environment is created here that allows you to actually dig into the silly questions you'd feel quite embarrassed to ask in a lot of other places.
Yeah, I'd maybe just add to that one of the advantages of the rotation program is you sort of collect mentors as you go. So every year you have the same year group mentor, as Kirsty mentioned. That doesn't change. But every time you move to a team, you get a new team, you get a new mentor. But you still built those relationships in previous teams, and I've found that informally those relationships are still, they're still there. And you just gradually build out your network of people across the investment floor. So the person that mentored me in my first year isn't my day-to-day mentor now, but we'll still go for lunch occasionally, or we'll discuss research that we're working on, and it's good to know there are just more people you could ask questions to if you need to. So yeah, plenty of support in that way. And then certainly I've benefited from things like there's a coaching program that you can take advantage of for more of the soft skills development. There's a heap of stuff like that as well, which is great.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so the last question we'll have here before I jump into some of the questions that have been asked by our audience is for yourself, Kirsty. Obviously, you said you've been here for 12 years. How would you say that your role has changed over that period of time?
So I think the fundamental research part of the role hasn't changed that much, in that I still spend the majority of my time researching companies. But I think probably on a week-to-week basis, the time spent researching companies varies a lot more than it did when I first started, because you take on, I guess, more responsibilities over time. And if you do decide to go down the fund management route, you then have additional responsibilities or slightly different quirks that come with your role as well. But so I'd say that, when I first started, basically all of my days were spent researching companies. And like Lucy and David have sort of alluded to, that came in lots of different forms. So it might be I'm sitting on my desk, it might be that I'm on a call, it might be that I'm meeting a management team, or maybe I'm on a trip meeting a company, etc. Or it might be that I'm researching a company that somebody else has written on that we're going to discuss, because you need to be prepped up for that. So I still do all of those things, but I think over time I spend, like I say, I think that varies more week to week, because I will have things like client pitches. If we're trying to win new clients, I might do conferences or stage presentations at various different things. I might be having catch-ups with existing clients who have questions, or want that kind of regular interaction with investment managers. So it keeps you on your toes. And I think even if you stay just as a researcher, like I have never, in the time period I've been here, and you'll see, like I have not been here a particularly long length of time in comparison to some of our other investors. And I think the reason that people do stay is because when you're researching companies, they change. Companies change, new companies emerge, you can rotate into different regions or markets. But, I've been on the US team for a significant amount of my time at Baillie Gifford. And, the companies are just, they still excite me, still looking at them now, because just, new technologies are coming out, new types of business are coming, and that just keeps you on your toes every day.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Right, let's have a look. We've got quite a lot of questions in here, so maybe we'll do a bit of a quick fire and try and get through as many of these as we can. Right, let's have a quick look. So shall we start with okay, so there's a lot in here about degrees, backgrounds. I've already covered a lot of these ones. Let's just go back up here. What would you say makes Baillie Gifford different from other companies? So, like, what's the unique selling point of Baillie Gifford is the specific question. Who is like to have a go at that one?
I'll give that one a go. I think the starting point is we don't want to slag off the competition or anything like that. There are lots of different companies who approach investing in lots of different ways, and that's ultimately how the investment market works. If everybody acted in the same way, then nobody would outperform. So we need lots of different players doing things in different ways. I think what makes Baillie Gifford special is kind of what I alluded to into those in those introductory comments, is we can genuinely be long-term investors because of the fact that the structure of the firm is built in that way, that we don't have to worry about quarterly performance. And that means that that enables you to build long-term relationships with the companies that we're investing in, which give us good access to these management teams, which allow us to gain additional insights that maybe others have not been able to gain. So I think it comes down to that focus on long-termism and the fact that that is matched in the way that the company is structured and the way that the company goes about staff development. I think that's what makes Baillie Gifford special. I also think that that's what makes people stay here for a long time, because they're afforded that opportunity to learn and to grow as an investor. And you do want to stay for a period of time, at least, in order to be able to see if you're any good at this job, because it's going to take quite a long period of time for you to be able to build that skill set as well.
Perfect, thank you. So here's a question for you, Lucy. So when we talk about autonomy, what does that actually mean? Like in the research process, like, so for example, are you given the chance to develop your own research style? How does that actually work?
Yeah, I mean, I think of it as nobody's telling you. Basically, when you get given a company to research or you've come up with an idea yourself, your team genuinely want to hear what you think of the company, and basically how you go about that research is largely up to you. So I remember that being one of the big surprises when I joined, was like, I think it was maybe 3 weeks into the job. My first research project has been set by my team. And my mentor at the time, I said to my mentor at the time, oh, it'd be great to speak with the company and to hear what they think about this. And he said, okay, we'll just go and set up the call and you take it. And it was like on my own. Obviously there is support there if you want, and your mentor will always step in if you're not feeling comfortable to do something. But I think it was to me, that's what the autonomy is about, which I think is brilliant, right? Is go away and have a think about something, do your own research. There's not a cookie cutter approach to investing. If there was, we wouldn't be. I doubt that's a way to sort of outperform for clients. So it's really about finding your own ways and methods and things that work for you. In terms of whether that means having your own philosophy, I'd say at this point, no, right? You're working on a team that'll have an investment philosophy and an investment process. So that means you typically have a question structure for your reports, and those vary across the teams. So, for example, the team I'm working on at the moment, we have 9 key questions that we structure our research around. So I'm free to go away and research the company as I see fit, but I need to still come back and answer those questions and present my research to my team. I guess otherwise it would be like all looking for completely different things and going about it in different ways. So yeah, there's definitely a balance there, but I think it's a pretty autonomous research process.
Great, thank you very much. So here's a question that's come in for you, David, and it said, did you ever think that you'd be working in an investment research role? And what was the turning point for you deciding that this was a career that you wanted to come into?
Yeah, I wasn't too sure what I really wanted to do for quite a long time. I kind of thought music seems like a good route, maybe academia. But yeah, I really liked problem solving, and this felt like a great way to just continuously be faced with changing problems. So once I kind of had realized that, that pushed me towards thinking maybe venture capital is a good kind of idea, because I like the idea of the kind of long-term horizons, the problem solving alongside that. But yeah, I still wasn't even set on it then. Finance wasn't, I don't think that I'm the typical kind of finance person in a lot of ways. So it did seem like maybe music, maybe something a little bit more creative. But yeah, once I found out more about Baillie Gifford, then I thought this is kind of the perfect mix of kind of creative and a lot of problem solving going along with it. I don't know if that answers it well. Is that okay?
No, that's fine. Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to take a pause here again and just give another little bit of information update. So there's a lot of questions in here about the application process. Okay, what makes a good application? What makes my application stand out? What is the different steps to the process? So I'll cover off very quickly how our application process works, but I am going to signpost you to another event. So we're running an event on the 26th of September, which is about our application process. So that's just dedicated to the application process. So I would encourage you to sign up for that one if you have questions on that. We will cover some of them here, but it's a 3-stage application process. So you go onto our website, apply through there. There's upload your CV and you would fill in 2 application questions. After that, your application would be screened. If successful, you would do a first round interview, which is 1 hour on Zoom. And then if successful after that, you would come for an assessment day, which would take place in the office. So that's obviously the final stage. And then at that point, you would either get offer or no offer. So that in a nutshell is the process. But as I say, we will go through that in more detail on that other session. But I will ask, because there's a lot of very similar questions here. So is there any advice that the panel would give to lots of these questions about how you can make your application stand out? So if I had to ask you one piece of advice for our candidates that are asking, what would that be? So Lucy, would you like to go first? What one piece of advice would you give somebody?
I suppose the problem with the question is if I give you an answer, you've all heard it, so you're all going to use that in your application and then they won't stand out. So it's, yeah, I don't think the whole point is we're trying to recruit a mixed bunch of people. It's almost like, like a little portfolio of people. They all bring different things, right? So I think just really try and reflect on the skills and personality traits that you have and how do you think that applies to this type of job, and then try and bring as much of that through in your application as possible. It's really quite a personal thing, which is why it's so difficult to give a generic answer or generic bit of advice, and if we did, it would almost defeat the point, right?
Yeah. Anything that you want to add to that, Kirsty?
I think ultimately the recruitment process is about trying to understand how you as an individual think, and that's what we're trying to really assess. How do you think through processes? And that's why you can recruit people from lots of different backgrounds, because it's just about understanding those thought processes. So one of my pieces of advice would just be trying to think about why you're applying. Like Lucy said, what are the skill sets that you think you bring? Don't try to think of the skill sets that you think that we're looking for. Try to understand what you think the job entails and why you think you might be good at it. And that's really what you have to write. And the greatest advantage of that is that will be unique to every single person. And that's what's going to help your you're a standout is that you actually just are honest and say, well, this is what I think the role means, and this is why I think I could do it.
Perfect, thank you. Anything to add, David?
Yeah, I think Kirsty and Lucy covered it really well. But yeah, overall, just be honest. If you can't be yourself in the application process, then I think there'd be a decent chance that if you got the job, you wouldn't enjoy it that much. So just making sure that you're being yourself and that everyone is an individual. So we like individuals and we want you to be an individual. So lean into the unique things that you've done in your life.
Perfect, thank you, everyone. I think a very good summary there of the uniqueness of your application is really what we're looking for. So that would kind of be the summary point on that one. Okay, Kirsty, I think this one's maybe for you because I think you maybe did mention this. So could you elaborate on how Baillie Gifford sees you as an individual rather than a cog in the machine? So what does that actually look like in practice?
I think this sort of connects into Lucy's point earlier about autonomy. You are given quite a lot of flexibility to research areas that you're interested in. Now, does that mean that you're allowed to just do whatever you want? No. Is it the case that your team is going to provide direction? Yes. But ultimately, your rotations, and I think this is connected to somebody else's question talking about how the rotations work. The rotations, the whole reason behind the rotation is to help you as an individual to develop as an investor, to try and put you onto teams that maybe stretch you, that maybe make you think about investment slightly differently, because we want you to uncover that kind of investor that you are inside, as opposed to you deciding up front, this is the type of investor that I want to be. And I think if you try and make that decision too early, what happens is that you're not really that type of investor. And when you're running your portfolio and things go wrong, you can't stick to what you believe because you don't know what you believe. And so I think the reason that what I mean by being treated as an individual is that ultimately everybody's career path is going to be slightly different. You're going to rotate through lots of different teams, and that's going to help you to evolve as an individual and you to develop your investment style. And therefore, at the end of that kind of 5-year program, that doesn't mean that you're going to go to a team and that's going to be your home forever. You're still evolving, you're still learning at that point. But it's about trying to say at that point, what kind of investor do you think you are? And trying to then match you with a team that really sort of suits what you've evolved into being, as opposed to saying from the get-go, you're going to be a US investor, you're going to be an emerging markets investor, you're going to be a global investor, you're going to be very high growth, you're going to be more sort of interested in different types of growth. It's allowing you to discover who you are and then trying to match you with the right teams after that.
Perfect, thank you. And Kirsty touched on it there. There's a few questions in here about rotations and do you get to pick the team that you're in, and how does all of that work? So the way that it basically works is when you join, you're allocated into a team, and then every year thereafter you rotate. There's a conversation that happens. Your requirement might be taken into consideration if they can do it, but everybody's obviously rotating. But as Kirsty just touched on there, the idea of it is to give you as much exposure as possible to different teams before you kind of get into your 4th year, and you kind of then go into more of a kind of a 2-year rotation at that point. So that is really how the rotations work, and it's out there for that idea to get you that experience. Right, let's just have a wee look. So questions in here about when you have to be, what year you have to be in, and internships. We don't currently offer an internship just now, and you have to be in a penultimate year. So that can be undergrad, postgrad, or obviously for people who are career changers as well. Then obviously that would just be you kind of leaving your job and moving across to this as well. So our opportunities start in September of every year. And that's a fixed start date for everybody, obviously because of the training that was spoken about. Everyone joins at the same time. Okay, so next question was, Kirsty, when you look on people you've hired or people you've had in your team, what would you say are the key characteristics of somebody who's successful as an investor?
I think there are a couple. Well, there's more than a couple. I think that there are characteristics that are not common, but I think there are a few that are common. So I think there's a willingness to embrace uncertainty. So not looking to be, I think Lucy alluded to this earlier, not looking for that certainty, that correct answer, being willing to, I guess, hold two opposing ideas in your head at the same time, like being able to have quite strong conviction in something, but also recognize that you might be wrong, and not constantly searching for I'm right or I'm wrong. And that is quite a difficult skill, and that takes a bit of time to build up as well, to be able, because particularly when you come from an academic background versus if you've been working, that can be quite a difficult thing. I think the second one is a genuine curiosity, so a willingness to ask questions, to genuinely just want to know more about the companies you're investing in, the companies other people are researching. I remember in my first year feeling like I was just constantly badgering my mentor because he made the very foolish mistake of sitting next to me and just constantly asking him questions like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Because I just wanted to learn. It felt like a very foreign language, a lot of what was going on around me at the time. So I think you've got that sort of willingness to be wrong. I think you've got that curiosity. And I think also connected to that, just a willingness to just try it. Not come in with too many assumptions about who you are and what you want to be, and just go into teams and go into different groups of individuals and just say, I'm going to give this a go. And if I come out of it and decide, nope, that team's philosophy wasn't for me, but I gave it a go and I've decided I don't want to work on that team, that's absolutely fine. But it's willing to embrace that, the opportunities that are in front of you, I think, as well.
Thank you very much. Okay, so next question. What do you enjoy most about your role? So, David, let's go to you first.
It's actually what Kirsty was just speaking about. It's being able to consider two opposing sides to an argument and then really push into either side of those, consider them and choose areas to dig into further. None of these discussions that we have are ever the kind of final decision on anything. It's always adapting, it's always evolving. And so being able to pick up on something that may be valuable to the team and kind of dig into that a little bit, give that to them, and then it just adds, just brick by brick, you're just adding little pieces to everyone's knowledge about companies. And because that's always evolving, it's just an infinite kind of problem. It's very fun to address.
Thanks, David. Interesting question in here, which is really talking about, like, there's a few questions in here about culture. So what is it? What do you do outside of research? What's the culture like on the floor? And how much opportunity do you get to mix with senior staff or partners? Lucy, will I give that one to you?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I'd go back to mentioning the rotations as just quite an organic way to meet more senior investors as you go along and build those relationships. But there are things like how I invest sessions, which are really good. So senior investors will take the time to sit down. It's usually like a lunchtime. So you'll get various senior investors sitting down with maybe my year group. I'm not sure if David's year group's done the same thing, but the idea is just to sit down in a small group and hear about their way of investing and lessons they've learned along the way and that sort of thing. So that's really valuable. And then I guess the culture point and what it's like, there's a few different sides of that. So I guess there's a social aspect, and there's firm-wide events and investment floor events. But I think ultimately the different investment teams also have their own sort of microcultures. And certainly that's been my experience. Is like there's always the scope to join in investment floor wide social events and that sort of thing. But there's each team will have slightly different culture and social aspect to that as well.
Thank you. Right, we're running quite quickly out of time, so I'm going to try and get two very quick ones in. So David, is there any books or resources that you feel would help other people to improve their skill when thinking about applying?
I feel like the most helpful book that I've read for what the job is like was probably Obliquity by John Kay. I think that's a fantastic book. That just addresses how the direct approach is not often the best one, and how kind of muddling through is often a great way to a successful outcome.
Thank you very much. Okay, the last question, which I'm going to pose to you all, what would you say is the most challenging and the most rewarding part of your job? So let's start with Kirsty.
I think the most challenging part is that you can look like an idiot for a very long time, and then you might just be an idiot, or at the end of it you might turn out to be right, and make your clients potentially a lot of money. So I'd say that's both the most challenging and also the most rewarding part of it, that you can spend an awful lot of time researching a company, coming up with the hypotheses for that company, meeting the management team, discussing it with your team, deciding to invest, and something can happen that just completely torpedoes your investment case, and that can be quite a challenging thing to handle. But on the flip side of that, you can also have something happens that really just accelerates your investment case. And again, that can be, or your investment case can play out exactly as you expected, or your investment case can play out nothing like you expected, but you still do very well for your clients as well. So I think the most challenging and rewarding part of this is that it's very difficult to define what is right and what is wrong, and that makes it really hard, but that also makes it really rewarding as well.
Thanks, Kirsty. David.
I think the most challenging part is kind of going through a kind of Dunning-Kruger effect with where you start looking at a company and then you think quite quickly, oh, I understand it now. This is how I feel about it. And then you'll just get more pieces of information, chat with more people. You'll kind of go through a process of, I really understand what's going on and I believe this, to just completely flipping between all of these perspectives quite a lot before actually getting to a solid place that you believe in. And kind of going through that process is very rewarding because it genuinely feels like you're growing and improving, but it's also quite challenging at points to decide, this is what I believe at this point.
Thanks, David. Lucy?
Yeah, somebody asked a question about how do you, sort of going in more detail to the research program, how how do you filter out valuable research inputs from noise? And I think that is a challenge, right? Just being overwhelmed with the amount of information we have access to now. And so, certainly that can be a challenging part of like, do I actually have any insight about this stock? I've spent a few weeks working on something. What's my sort of differentiated take on this? So that can be a challenge. But then conversely, like there are times where you've put together so many different inputs and a pattern starts to emerge or a picture starts to emerge, and that can be really rewarding. It's a really good feeling when you actually feel like you're onto something. And I think you also get that just discussing other people's ideas as well, and you come out of a stock discussion and you think actually we're much further forward in our understanding of that company or that investment case than we were 2 hours ago. And it's a good feeling.
So first of all, thank you to the panelists for coming along today and for sharing your insight. And also thank you for everyone putting your questions in. There's some really good questions in there. Apologies we've not had time to get to them all, but hopefully we've covered a good number of them through the various answers that we've given. As I said, I'll signpost you to other events that we are running over the course of the next kind of 5 or 6 weeks. They're all listed in the website, and another good opportunity for you to ask any questions if you have them. Once this session finishes, there will be a short survey that will pop up. If I could ask you to complete that, just so that we can get feedback to think about our future events, and make sure that we are really covering what it is that you are looking for on these sessions. So yeah, thank you everybody and have a lovely afternoon. Thank you.